The first warning that the war had finally come to Inex was the smell of ozone on the wind, and a blind woman pausing mid-sentence in a classroom of children because she heard, 3 kilometers above the orchard, a ship that had no business being there. Her name was Flora Rain. She was 31 years old, the only teacher in a town of 412 people, and she had been blind since the day she was born on a freighter between stars. She read her students by their breathing. She knew Toma was lying about the spilled ink because his shoulders had stopped moving. She knew little Seth had a fever before his mother did because the warmth came off him wrong. And she knew the ship overhead was wrong because it made no sound a transport ought to make. And the air it pushed down through the cedar trees carried a faint electric stink like a struck match held too close to the nose. She finished the sentence. The children were watching her, she could tell, the way a hush settles into a room when a teacher stops mid-word. "Read on for me, Mari," she said gently. "From where I left off, I forgot myself for a moment." She listened to Mari read while she walked to the window. She could not see the ship. She did not need to. The sound of it was a low, wrong hum that pressed against the side of her face like a hand. Then it moved on, north toward the mountains, toward the Astoria works, and the hum thinned out and was gone. And Flora stood at the window, with her fingers resting on the warm wood, and felt the ordinary day continue around her like a held breath that had decided, against all evidence, to keep on holding. She did not know the name of the man who had landed in her town 6 weeks earlier. The one who limped, the one who bought eggs from her neighbor, and who once mended a fence for the schoolhouse without being asked. She knew him only by the way he walked, which was careful, and the way he spoke to her, which was without the soft lying tone people used with the blind. His name, he had told her, was Locke. She thought it was probably not his name. She had not minded. She did not know yet that the ship she had heard was looking for him. Locke was up on the schoolhouse roof when the second ship came down, and he had a hammer in his hand and 3 nails between his teeth, and he had been thinking for most of the morning about how a man could go quite a long time without remembering he had killed anyone if he kept his hands busy. He felt the second ship before he heard it, a pressure at the base of the skull, a small cold knock against the inside of his thoughts, like someone at a door he had bolted decades ago. He took the nails out of his mouth one by one and set them on the shingle. The ship came down in the orchard at the edge of town, and a man got out of it who was not, by any honest standard, a man. He was tall and thin and gray-skinned in patches where the skin had been replaced. One eye was a black bead set deep behind a brow ridge that did not belong to a human face. He wore a long coat the color of dried blood, and he walked through the cedars without disturbing them, which was the thing that made Locke close his eyes for a moment up on the roof. "You are Locke the carpenter," the gray-skinned man said pleasantly when he reached the foot of the ladder. "Forgive me. I have come a long way to find a carpenter." "You have the wrong man," Locke said. He kept his voice level. He came down the ladder slowly. His knee did not want to. He had let it heal wrong on purpose 20 years ago so it would slow him down, so he would remember. The gray-skinned man waited at the foot of the ladder with his hands folded in front of him. Up close he smelled of antiseptic and something under it that was not from any planet Locke had been born on. "My name is Major Kalian," the gray-skinned man said. "I am with the Concord Survey. I am, despite appearances, on the side of the people in this town. I would like to buy you a cup of whatever passes for coffee here, and I would like to talk to you about a man called Lord Leon." Locke did not answer for a long moment. He looked past Callian's shoulder, at the cedars, at the late autumn light coming sideways through them, at the schoolhouse window where he could see, very faintly, the shape of Flora Rain standing with her hand on the sill. "All right," he said, "but not at the schoolhouse." They walked down the lane toward the empty barn where Locke had been sleeping since the summer. Callian moved his head the way a man moves it when he is reading a room for exits, even outdoors, even in an orchard. He was not, Locke noted, what the Concord usually sent. The Concord usually sent men in pressed uniforms with the smell of recycled air on them. Callian smelled of a different war. "Lord Leon," Callian said when they were inside the barn and the door was shut. "You will have heard the name. He has burned 6 freighters in this sector in the last year. 2 weeks ago, he attacked the Astoria concern. 28 dead. The Astoria board did not report the attack. Then how do you know about it? We have our ways. The point is this. A corporation does not eat 28 dead and a hull breach in silence unless the corporation is afraid of what an investigation might find. The Concord would like to know what Astoria is afraid of. The Conquered would also, if it is at all possible, like Lord Leon stopped. You have soldiers for that. We have soldiers. We do not, at the moment, have anyone who can stand in front of an Esper of his class and not be turned inside out. Locke leaned against the workbench. He could feel Callion's eyes on him, both the human one and the black bead. You have the wrong man, he said again. Callion did not argue. He reached into his coat and laid a small flat object on the workbench between them. A data slate. He thumbed it on, and a still image rose out of it. A face, gray-eyed, narrow, set in a wide jaw. A man maybe 30, looking into a camera with the open, unguarded look of someone who has not yet learned to be afraid. That is the only photograph that exists of Lord Leon before the modifications, Callion said. It was taken on a labor world called Holith, in the southern arm, by a girl who was 11 years old. She is, we believe, the only person in this galaxy who ever loved him. The Astoria concern strip-mined Holith in the year 328 of the space century. The strip mine collapsed. 243 people were under it. The girl who took this photograph was one of them. Lord Leon was off-world that week on a hauler. He came back to a hole. The Astoria concern did not pay restitution. The Conquered did not investigate. The matter, as our reports put it, was closed. Locke looked at the photograph for a long time. And now he is killing them back, he said. Now he is killing them back. The Conquered cannot be seen to side with a pirate. But the Concord, between you and me and the dust in this barn, would like very much for someone to make sure that when Lord Leon dies, he does not die before Astoria's board sits in a chair under a hot light. Locke laughed, once, without humor. You want me to keep a vengeful Esper alive long enough to testify? I want you to keep him alive long enough to win, Callion said quietly. The difference matters. Outside, far up in the cedars, a bird called twice and went silent. Locke heard the silence under it and looked at the door. How did you find me? There is exactly one man on the Conquered rolls who is on record as having beaten a Class 6 Esper in single combat. He has been dead, on paper, for 22 years. He has been buying eggs and mending fences in a town called Inex for 6 weeks. I am a thorough reader, Carpenter. And Leon? Has he read what you have read? For the first time, Callion looked tired. The black bead of his bad eye flickered. Lord Leon is coming to Inex tomorrow night, he said. Astoria's vice-chairman, a man named Gregor Astor, has been moved here for his protection. He is in the lake house on the north shore. Astor believes the lake house is secret. It is not. Leon will be here before the second moon rises. I came ahead because I wanted to ask you, before he arrived, whether you would help me do this thing without killing the town. Locke closed his eyes. He thought of Flora Rain at the schoolhouse window. He thought of the way she had laid her hand on the sill, the way her head had tilted toward the sound of a ship she could not see. He thought of the fence he had mended, which had taken him 3 afternoons because his knee did not want to. All right, he said, I will help you, but on one condition. Name it. The children leave tonight. Every child in this town, on any ship you can find. I do not care if they sleep on the floor of a freighter for a week. They leave tonight. Callion inclined his head. That can be done. Flora Rain knew something was wrong because Locke came to the schoolhouse at sundown and asked her in a low voice to come outside. The air had gone cold. The cedars were moving the way they moved before a storm. Though there was no storm coming, only the clean, dry sky of the southern hemisphere in autumn. She walked beside him down the schoolhouse steps. He did not take her arm. He never did. He walked at her elbow and let her feel the path under her feet, which was the right way to walk with her, though almost no one knew it. There is a transport coming for the children tonight, he said. All of them. The Concord is paying. There will be a teacher with them on the other end. They will be safe. Why? He was quiet for a long time. She listened to his breathing. Because a man is coming here tomorrow, he said, to kill another man, and I do not want anyone small to be in the way of him. She reached out then and found his sleeve and held it. Just the fabric of it between her fingers. She had never touched him before. And you, she said, I am staying. Why? He did not answer for a long time. The wind moved in the cedars. Somewhere a child was laughing inside the schoolhouse, and the sound came thin and far through the open door. Because if I leave, he said at last, the man who comes here will follow me, and the next town will be smaller than this one, and they will not have a Concord transport. So I am staying. I am sorry, Flora. I am very sorry to have brought this to your school. You did not bring it, she said. You only stood between it and us for 6 weeks. I knew you were standing in front of something. I did not know what. He breathed out a long, controlled breath, the way a man breathes who has been holding something in for a long time. Flora, he said, When the ship comes for the children, get on it. No, Flora, there will be a fever on the transport. There always is. 3 children in this school cannot be moved without a teacher who knows their names. I will go as far as the next system and put them in good hands. Then I will come back. Flora, you may not have a town to come back to. She turned her face up toward where she heard his voice. There was a small, quiet smile at the corner of her mouth. Then I will come back to a place that used to be a town, she said. And I will know it by the smell of the cedars. Locke, I do not know your real name. I do not need to. But whatever you are about to do it as if you intend to come home. He did not answer that. He could not. He stood in the wind with her hand on his sleeve, and he looked away from her, which was a kindness, because the look on his face was not one she would have wanted to see if she could have seen it. They came in the night for the children, 3 battered Concorde shuttles with the markings half painted over, and they were gone before the second moon was up. Flora went with them. She kissed each of the children on the forehead before she boarded, and she touched the door frame of the schoolhouse, with her palm flat against the wood, the way a sailor touches the rail of a ship before a long crossing. Locke watched the shuttles climb. He stood in the orchard with his hands in his pockets. Callian stood beside him. You did not tell her what you are, Callian said. No. Why, because she liked me, Locke said. That was a thing I had not had in some time. I wanted to keep it for one more night. Callian did not answer. He had a flask in his coat. He took it out, unscrewed it, and offered it across. Locke took it, drank, and handed it back without looking. The taste was sharp and old and not from this hemisphere. They stood in the orchard a while, in the way men stand who have done this sort of work before, and who know that the work is bad and that drinking quietly together before, it is one of the few things that has been honest in their lives. You should know, Callian said at last, that I lied to you in the barn this morning. I know. Not about Leon, about me. The Concorde did not send me. I came on my own. There are 8 of us at most who think that what happened on Holith ought to be answered for. The rest do not want this trial. They will try to bury it. I came ahead because I needed to know what kind of man you had become before I asked you to do a thing that the Concorde does not want done. Locke looked at him sidelong. He could see, in the moonlight, that the black bead of Callian's bad eye was not, in fact, a Concorde prosthetic. It was an older make. A pirate cybernetic, 15 years out of date, of the kind that had been worn by a particular brotherhood of haulers in the Southern Arm, in a time and a place and a context that Locke suddenly understood very well. You were on Holith, Locke said quietly. I was on the hauler with him, Callian said. The week the mine fell, I came back to a hole too. He went one way, after. I went the other. We have not seen each other in 38 years. I would like, if it is possible, to take him in alive. Then we are working for the same thing. Yes. All right. They stood a little longer. The shuttles were specks now, climbing toward the cold place between the moons. Somewhere a dog was barking, 3 farms over. The smell of the cedars was very strong. Major, Locke said. If this goes badly, if I cannot stop him, if he gets to the lake house. Yes, Astor is 63. He has a weak heart. He will not survive the first thing Leon does to him. After that, Leon will come for you, because you were on the hauler with him, and you did not come and find him. And after that, he will come for me, because I am the man the Concorde sent. And after that, he will find Flora on the transport, because he can, and because by then he will be a thing that does. Do you understand what I am telling you? I understand. Then if I fall, you do not run. You go to the lake house, and you kill Astor yourself with a sidearm before Leon gets there. Take it away from him. Make it so there is no reason for him to keep going. Callian was silent for a long moment. I will, he said. Thank you, Carpenter. Yes, you are a hard man. No, Locke said. I was a hard man. I am a man who is trying very much this evening to remember what the other kind feels like. He did not sleep that night. He sat on the schoolhouse porch in the dark. With his back against the door, he had hung himself in his second week in town, and he listened to the orchard, and he thought. He thought about Helion. He had been 29 years old at Helion. The witch they had sent him after had been a woman of about his age with the sort of mind that bent other minds the way a hand bends wire. She had been the prize student of a woman called Khan, who had wanted to raise an army out of children, and Locke had walked into her tower and walked out of it carrying her in his arms because she had, at the last moment, recognized him from a dream. They had given him a medal for that. He had thrown the medal off the side of a cruiser 2 weeks later. He had given them the rest of his life after that, until he had nothing left to give. and they had not noticed when he stopped giving it, because by then he was useful only as a story to tell new recruits, and stories did not need to be present to be told. He thought about his daughter. He did not think about her often. He did not let himself. But tonight, in the dark, with a war coming down on his town and a blind woman climbing through the cold between stars to take 3 feverish children to a better hospital, he let himself think about her. Her name had been Ong. She had been 9. She had liked the noise a particular kind of bird made, and she had wanted, more than anything, to be a teacher. He had not been there when she died. He had been at Helion. He had been carrying a witch out of a tower while his daughter, on a planet whose name he no longer said aloud, was under a building that had come down in a war he had been told was somewhere else. He thought about Mara, who he had never met, who had been 11, who had owned a camera. He thought about Flora. And he thought about Lord Leon, who was somewhere up there above the atmosphere of Siren tonight, sitting in a cabin on a stolen ship with a photograph in his hand, talking to a girl who could not hear him. He thought, "There is a thing I have to do tomorrow that is not in any of the manuals. I have to lose a fight on purpose for long enough to make a man cry. I have to be hit by a Class 7 Esper and not hit him back until he is empty enough to listen. I have to do this without dying. I have to do this without letting him kill anyone in the meadow. I have to do this without letting Callian shoot him through the back of the head, which Callian will be tempted to do, because Callian loved him once, and that is the kind of love that will shoot a man rather than see him taken." He breathed out slowly. He thought, "I am not sure I can do this," he thought. "I will try." Toward dawn he slept for perhaps an hour, sitting up against the door of the schoolhouse. He dreamed of a girl with a camera. She handed it to him without speaking and walked away into a field, and he woke with the weight of it still in his hand. Lord Leon came down through the high atmosphere of Shiren the next evening, with his crew of 41 and his ship cloaked against every sensor the Concord had ever built, and he was not, Locke found, what he had expected. He had expected fury. He had expected a man eaten down to the marrow by what had been done to him, a man who had replaced the parts of himself that hurt with parts that did not feel anything. That had been the file. That was what they always said about men like Lord Leon. What came out of the lander that touched down in the meadow north of the lake was a tall, narrow man in a long coat, with 2 thin scars under one eye, and an expression on his face that was almost gentle. He carried no weapon Locke could see. He stepped off the lander ramp and stood for a moment with his head tilted, listening, the way a man listens at the door of a house he used to live in. Locke was lying on his belly in the high grass 200 meters away. His breath was steady. He could feel Lord Leon's mind from here. It was not what he had expected either. It was not hot. It was quiet, the way a frozen lake is quiet, the way a room with 1 candle in it is quiet. Leon's lips moved. Locke could not hear him from this distance, but he could feel the shape of the words. Leon was talking to someone who was not there. He was talking to the girl in the photograph. Locke closed his eyes. He had killed 7 Espers in his life. He had loved 2 of them. He had not killed any of them by surprise. He did not believe in killing men by surprise. He believed it made the killer worse than the killed. And there had been a time in his life when this had mattered to him very much, and a time in his life when it had not. And he was, this evening, very much in the first kind of time. He stood up out of the grass. Lord Leon's head turned toward him with the slow, deliberate movement of a man who has been expecting company. "Who are you?" Leon said. His voice carried across the meadow without seeming to be raised. "My name is Locke," Locke said. "I am the carpenter." Leon looked at him for a long time. The 2 thin scars under his eye moved when he frowned. "You are not a carpenter." "No, but I have been one for 6 weeks. I find I am not bad at it." "You are what they sent to stop me." "Yes, you are what beat the witch on Helion." There was a long pause. The wind moved the grass. "That was a long time ago," Locke said. "It was 38 years ago," Leon said. "I was a boy on Holith. They told us about it in the labor school. They told us a man had stood in front of a god and bent her. They told us that man was on our side." "I was." "Then why are you in front of me?" Locke did not answer. He could feel, around the edges of his mind, the pirate crew spreading out through the meadow. Very quietly, very competently. He could feel each of them. 41 men and women, and 3 of them were Espers, and the rest had the sort of mind that comes from being given something to fight for after a life of not having one. He could feel, too, the lake house up on the north shore, where Gregor Astor was at this moment drinking something amber out of a heavy glass and waiting to be told he was safe. He could feel the small, neat shape of Major Killian's mind 2 ridges away, watching, waiting for him to move. He took a breath. "Lord Leon," he said, "I read your file on the way here. I know about Holith. I know about the strip mine. I know about the girl with the camera. I know her name was Mara, and she was 11, and she made you laugh, and she is under a mountain on a planet that the Concord does not list anymore on its star charts." Leon's face did not change, but the meadow went very, very quiet. "Go on," Leon said. "Gregor Astor is in the lake house on the North Shore. He is 63 years old. He has a weak heart and a fear of fire. He was the operations vice chairman of the Astoria concern in 328 of the space century. He approved the deep core extraction on Holith. He approved the safety waivers. He approved the silence after. If you go to that lake house tonight, you will find him exactly where you expect to find him. And after you kill him, you will have killed the man who killed Mara, and you will have ended. That is the idea, Carpenter. I know. I want to offer you a different one." Leon's head tilted a fraction. He waited. "Major Callion of the Concord is half a kilometer from us in the trees. He has been authorized to take Gregor Astor into custody tonight on charges that include the deaths on Holith. The trial would be public. It would be loud. It would, very likely, end with Astor and 4 other men sitting in a small white room for the rest of their lives, with their names in every Concord record that exists, with their crimes carved into the public memory of this galaxy in a way that no killing on a North Shore could ever carve them. I am asking you to let us do that instead." Leon laughed once, a short, dry sound. "And you trust the Concord?" "No. Then why are you asking me to?" "I am not asking you to trust the Concord. I am asking you to trust me. I will stand at that trial. I will testify. I will give the Concord my name back, my real one, in open court, which is something I have spent 22 years not doing. I will make this loud, loud enough that even Holith hears it. You would do that for me?" "I would do it for Mara." The wind moved in the grass. For a long moment, Lord Leon did not move and did not speak. Locke could feel his mind, the frozen lake of it, and he could feel something move under the ice, something old and hurt and very, very tired. Then Lord Leon smiled. It was a small smile, almost kind. "No, Carpenter," he said gently. "I am sorry. I have come too far." And he raised his hand. The thing about a Class 7 Esper in a meadow at dusk is that the fight does not look like a fight. There are no flashes. There are no shouts. There is a moment when the grass between 2 men lies down flat, as if a great weight had been set on it, and the air between them goes hard, and a man 200 meters away, who happens to be looking up at the second moon, will see the moon waver, very slightly, the way a coin wavers at the bottom of a still pond. Locke felt the first blow come and he turned it. He felt the second and the third, and he turned those too. He felt the fourth, and it bit him, and a line of blood opened along the side of his neck, though nothing had touched him, and he tasted copper at the back of his tongue. He did not push back. Not yet. He let Leon hit him. He stood in the meadow and let a man who had lost everything hit him with everything he had, because that was the only honest way to talk to a man like Lord Leon, and because Locke needed Leon to spend himself. And because, and this was the part of it that mattered, the part of it that was not strategy at all. Locke had loved a girl once on a planet that the Concord no longer charted, and he understood. The pirate crew came in on his flanks. He felt them coming. He laid each of them down without killing them, the way a man lays sleeping children in a row, and they slept in the meadow with their weapons quiet beside them. The 3 Espers among them he was harder with. He had to be. He took 2 of them at the wrists, the way you take a knife from a child, and the third he had to break a little, and he was sorry for that, and he would remember it. Lord Leon was on one knee in the grass. He was breathing hard. His coat was open. The 2 thin scars under his eye were wet with something that was not entirely tears. "Why don't you finish it?" he said. Locke knelt down in the grass in front of him. His own knee did not want to. He let it not want to. "Because Mara was 11, he said. "Because I had a daughter once on a planet that does not exist anymore, and she was 9. Because I am not the Concord, and I am not Astoria, and I am not even, anymore, the thing they called me at Helion. I am a man who has spent 6 weeks mending a fence for a blind schoolteacher in a town called Inex, and I would like, very much, to go back to mending it. I cannot do that if I kill you." Leon stared at him. "You think the trial will be enough?" "No. I think the trial will be loud. There is a difference. The loudness is the thing. The loudness is what you have not had. Holith has not had a sound in 38 years. I am offering you a sound." Lord Leon began, very slowly, to weep. He did it the way a man weeps who has not done it in a long time and has forgotten the shape of it. Locke waited. He did not touch him. He did not move. He waited the way he had waited, 6 weeks ago, on a roof of a schoolhouse for a hammer to be handed up to him, because some things must be received and not taken. After a long time, Lord Leon said, "All right, Carpenter, all right. You will testify, I will testify. You will say her name, I will say her name, in open court. I will say it until they cannot pretend they did not hear it." Lord Leon nodded, once. He closed his eyes. He let his hands fall open in the grass. Major Callion came down out of the trees with 11 Concord Marines, and they took Lord Leon into custody as gently as they had ever taken anyone, and they took Gregor Astor out of the lake house on the north shore in his slippers, and the night was, in the end, very quiet. The trial in the Concord capital lasted 9 months. It was the loudest trial in living memory. The name Hollis was on every newsfeed in the Federation. The name Mara was spoken in open court by a man with a quiet voice and a slight limp, who gave his real name on the stand and then sat down and answered every question that was put to him for as long as it took. The carpenter testified for 19 days. He spoke without notes. He spoke the way a man speaks who has been carrying something for a long time and who has decided at last to put it down on a clean floor and let the room see it. He named names. He named ships. He named the small white office on the Astoria flagship, where the safety waiver for the Hollis mine had been signed, and he named the man who had signed it, and he named the man who had filed the paperwork that had hidden the signing, and he named the auditor who had been paid to lose the file. He was asked on the second day why he had taken Lord Leon alive. He thought about it for a while. The court waited. They had learned by then to let him think. "Because the thing I was sent to kill him with," he said finally, "was the thing I had become, and I did not want him to die of it. He had been killed enough by men like that already." He was asked on the 11th day what he had said to Lord Leon in the meadow. "I offered him a sound," the carpenter said. The prosecutor, who was a careful man, asked him to explain. On Hollis, the carpenter said, 243 people died under a mountain, and nobody heard them. That was the thing that was done to them, not the dying, the not being heard. I told him that if he would come in with me, I would make sure the galaxy heard them. That is what I meant by a sound. The prosecutor looked at him for a long moment and then sat down without further questions. And a great many people in the gallery were weeping, and the carpenter sat in the witness box with his hands folded in his lap and waited for the next question. And the chairman of the court rapped the bench gently and called a recess. Lord Leon was sentenced to 40 years on a labor moon, where he taught reading to other prisoners, and where, 8 years in, he died of a heart that had been bad longer than anyone knew. He left a letter for the carpenter. The letter said, "Only, she would have liked you." Gregor Astor sat in a small white room for the rest of his life. So did the other 4 men. The Astoria concern was broken into 11 pieces, and the pieces were sold for restitution to the descendants of the dead of Hollis, and a school was built on a planet far from there with the money, and the school was named after a girl who had once held a camera. Major Callion retired from the Concord survey the week after the verdict. He went, the records say, to a labor moon in the southern arm, where he served the last 7 years of his old friend's sentence, sitting in the visitor's chair for 1 hour every Sunday, reading aloud, mostly poetry. He was there at the end. He was, by all accounts, holding Lord Leon's hand. The carpenter went back to Inex in the spring. The children were already back. They had been back for 6 months. The schoolhouse smelled of new paint and old cedar, and a fence had been mended in his absence, and not well. And he stood at the edge of the orchard with his hands in his pockets and looked at the bad mending for a long time, and he smiled. Flora Rain came out of the schoolhouse when she heard him on the gravel. She did not need to ask if it was him. She knew his walk. "You are late," she said. "I know. You said you would come home. I know." She stood on the porch for a moment with her hand on the rail. "You did not tell me what you were," she said. "No, I know now. Everyone knows now. You said her name in open court for 9 months. They played it on every channel." "Yes." "Was that wise?" "No," he said, "but it was loud." She walked down the steps. She walked the way she always walked, careful and unhurried. And she stopped in front of him and reached out and found, with her fingers, the line of the small thin scar that now ran along the side of his neck. She did not say anything for a while. "Locke," she said finally. "Yes, that is not your real name." "No, tell me your real name," he told her. She nodded. She kept her fingers on the scar a moment longer. Then she took her hand away. "All right," she said. "Come and look at the fence. They have made a great mess of it." "The children miss you," he laughed. He had not heard himself laugh in a long time. The sound surprised him, the way a bird surprises you in a quiet wood. He walked with her up to the schoolhouse, at her elbow, letting her feel the path under her feet, which was the right way to walk with her, and which almost no one knew. Behind them, in the orchard, the cedars moved a little in the wind, and the second moon was rising over the lake. And somewhere very far away, a girl named Mara, who had been 11 years old once and had owned a camera, would never be forgotten again by anyone, for as long as there was a Concord left to remember her. And somewhere farther away still, in the dark between the stars, the things that were watching humans, and there were things watching, there had always been things watching, made a small, careful notation in a very long ledger. They had assumed from the file that the carpenter would kill the pirate. They had assumed from the file that the pirate would kill the executive. They had assumed from the file that the planet of Siren would burn. They had not assumed that a man would kneel in the grass in front of his enemy and offer him, instead of a death, a sound. They did not have a word in any of their languages for what he had done. They began that night to invent one.